Look at the price tag on your phone, or your laptop, or the t-shirt you are wearing right now. You probably think that number is about labor costs, or corporate greed, or maybe inflation. But there is a narrow strip of water, less than 2 miles wide at its tightest point, that quietly decides the price of almost everything you buy. And the battle to control it is accelerating right now, in ways that almost nobody outside a handful of government war rooms and trading desks is paying attention to. This is the story of the Strait of Malacca, and the port that sits at its mouth like a gatekeeper to the entire global economy. You have probably never thought about Singapore in these terms. It is small. It has no natural resources. It has no hinterland. And yet, by every meaningful measure, it is the most strategically powerful piece of real estate on the planet right now. Over 40 million shipping containers passed through the port of Singapore in 2024 alone. That is more than 15% of every container that moved anywhere in the world. Connected to over 600 ports across the globe, over 130 international shipping lines, all converging on a single city roughly the size of London. But here is what makes Singapore genuinely extraordinary. It is not just a port, it is a cork in a bottle, and the bottle contains most of China's energy supply. The Strait of Malacca runs 550 miles between the Indonesian island of Sumatra to the west and the Malaysian peninsula to the east. At its narrowest point near the city of Singapore, it is just 1.7 miles across. 1.7 miles. That is the gap through which 80% of China's oil imports flow, every single day. According to analysis published by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, in the first half of 2025, an estimated 29% of all global seaborne oil trade moved through this single passage, making it the busiest oil choke point in the world, ahead even of the Strait of Hormuz. Think about what that means. Every day, more than 23 million barrels of oil squeeze through a channel narrower than most city rivers. Tankers carrying Middle Eastern crude bound for Shanghai. Container ships loaded with African raw materials heading to Guangdong factories. LNG carriers supplying the energy that keeps Chinese cities lit at night. And almost none of those ships have an alternative route. The Chinese government has understood this problem for decades. In 2003, the then leader Hu Jintao gave a speech that became famous inside Chinese strategic planning circles. He called it the Malacca Dilemma. His point was direct. China was building one of the most powerful economies in history, and yet the entire engine of that economy could be switched off by whoever controlled a strip of water that China did not own, did not govern, and could not easily defend. 2/3 of China's total trade by value passes through Malacca. 60% of its liquefied natural gas imports, 80% of its crude oil. A country that is the world's second largest economy, running on a lifeline it cannot secure. Now fast forward to 2026, and the Malacca Dilemma has just gotten a great deal more complicated for Beijing. In April of this year, the United States signed a major defense cooperation partnership with Indonesia. The two nations agreed to joint military training, shared intelligence, and the establishment of American naval infrastructure across the Indonesian archipelago. Indonesia, of course, is the country that owns and controls the coastlines of the Sunda and Lombok Straits, the only two alternative sea routes that ships could theoretically use to bypass Malacca if the strait were ever disrupted or blocked. The United States had already signed similar defense agreements with Singapore in 2005, Malaysia in 2025, and Thailand decades before that. Think about what that map looks like from Beijing. Every single country that borders or controls access to the Strait of Malacca now has a formal defense relationship with the United States. That is not a coincidence. That is a strategy. This is the part nobody is talking about in the mainstream financial press. Because on the surface, everything looks fine. Ships are moving, oil is flowing. The Port of Singapore reported record vessel tonnage arrivals in 2024. Prices are not spiking. Trade is not collapsing. Everything looks normal. But underneath the surface of those calm shipping lanes, a profound shift in leverage is taking place. And the rules of that shift will eventually show up in your grocery bill, your energy costs, and the price of every manufactured thing you depend on. Here is the counterintuitive part. The biggest winner in all of this is not obviously the United States. It might be Singapore. Singapore sits at the intersection of every tension in this equation. It is technically neutral. It has defense agreements with the United States, but it maintains deep economic ties with China. It runs the port that both sides depend on. Every nation that wants to use the strait, China, Japan, South Korea, India, the Middle East oil producers, needs Singapore to function. And Singapore has been remarkably skilled at playing every side. It has invested billions in its next-generation Tuas megaport, which is being built to handle 65 million containers per year by 2040. That is not a port being built for the world as it exists today. That is a port being built for a world in which global trade volumes keep rising, even as geopolitical tensions keep climbing. Singapore is betting that no matter who wins the great power competition, the goods will still have to move through Singapore. So far, that bet is paying off, but it carries enormous risks. Here's the thing China does not want to admit publicly. Its attempts to escape the Malacca dilemma have largely failed. Beijing has spent years and billions of dollars building overland pipelines from Russia and Central Asia. It has invested in railways connecting its interior to European markets. It has launched the Belt and Road Initiative, partly as an infrastructure strategy to build alternative supply chains. But according to reporting from the Observer Research Foundation, roughly 80% of China's oil and gas imports in 2024 still pass through the Strait of Malacca. The overland alternatives carry a fraction of the volume that maritime routes can handle. Rail networks cannot absorb what cargo ships can move. The geography is simply too powerful to route around, and now the United States has quietly positioned its allies along every exit. What does this mean for you? More than you might think. Your supply chain does not care about your political opinions. The electronics in your home were assembled using components sourced from at least 6 different Asian countries. The metals in your electric vehicle battery were almost certainly processed in China using ore that arrived through Malacca. The fuel that heats or cools your home was priced on a global market shaped by the flows through that strait. The food on your supermarket shelves was affected by container shipping costs that moved in direct response to events in these waters. The Red Sea crisis of 2024 showed you a preview of what a chokepoint disruption looks like. When Houthi attacks caused shipping companies to reroute vessels around Africa instead of through the Suez Canal, freight rates spiked, delivery times stretched by weeks, and price pressures rippled across every supply chain that touched the global economy. And the Suez Canal carries roughly 12 to 15% of global maritime trade. The Strait of Malacca carries 29% of global seaborne oil alone, plus tens of trillions of dollars in goods. The CSIS analysis found that nearly $6.4 trillion worth of goods passed collectively through the South China Sea's major straits in 2024. A disruption at Malacca would not look like the Red Sea crisis. It would look like something the modern global economy has never experienced before. So the next time you look at a price tag, your phone, your car, your grocery bill, you are not just looking at inflation or supply and demand or corporate margins. You are looking at the downstream price of a geopolitical chess match being played out in a 2-mile-wide channel on the other side of the world. A channel where, right now, the United States has just quietly tightened its grip, and China has quietly run out of moves to escape. The price tag on your phone has never just been about the phone.